To all those above me that watch over me, to all of you, my fave parapeeps on this side of the veil, welcome. This is Reverend Sean Whittington's Paranormal Ministry. I'm your host, Reverend Sean, the Rev. Welcome to my haunted house, my very haunted house. And it has been a little active today. Unusual, considering the guest I have coming on today. I'm going to get to him as soon as I can. I really thought about starting the show with a Bigfoot howl, but I didn't want to blow everybody's eardrums out, so I decided to skip on that. But are you feeling squatchy today? Because this show is going to be all about cryptids and the squatch, and we'll get a little paranormal talk in there too. But thank you all so very much for tuning in. I don't have a show without you guys, so God bless you all for that. Let's get to the prayer urn. Pete M. from Oklahoma. Rev, my dad just passed away. I am so sorry, Pete, to hear the bad news. Um, the funeral is Saturday. I would assume that's tomorrow. He lost a long battle with cancer, but lived a long life. He did believe in God. Could you please say a prayer for him? Pete, absolutely. I will say a prayer for your father. Okay. Everybody, please send all your love and light and positive vibes to Pete. And Pete, I wish you would have mentioned your father's name on here. I would have loved to have mentioned his name, but I will mention your name. Okay? Name of the Father and of the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God our Father, your power brings us to birth, your providence guides our lives, and by your command we return to dust. I pray for the dead, especially for Pete's father. May those who have been dear to me in life find a place in you in heaven. Lord, those who die still live in your presence. Their lives change but do not end. I pray in hope for my family, relatives, and friends, and for all the dead known to you alone. In company with Christ, who died and now lives, may they rejoice in your kingdom where all our tears are wiped away. Unite us together again as one family to sing your praise forever and ever. Amen. Hang in there, Pete. I recently lost my father a couple of years ago. Still haven't got over it, so I know how tough that is. God bless you, brother. And he's in heaven. You know that. Okay, let's do the paranormal ministry mailbag. Boom. Jerry V from Arizona. I'm a real estate agent. There is a house I'm trying to sell which is haunted. What should I do? Paranormal activity spikes every time I show the house. Jerry, been there, done that. Yeah, I've investigated many a haunted home for a real estate agent or two in my day. Not much you can do. Go in there one time by yourself, introduce yourself, and just talk to them like a normal human being to people that were once normal human beings. They just don't have a body anymore. There's a very special reason why they're still there, and there's a special reason why they get active when you show the home. They either something about the people that you're showing the home to they don't like, or they're just trying to get your guys' attention. Like, okay, cool if you want to buy this home, but we come with it. So talk with them. Ask them to please not scare off potential buyers, that you're doing your very best to try and keep the memory and the life of the home alive for many years to come by getting somebody good in there, and you come with all respect and yada, 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 and all that sort of stuff. But if it gets to a point where you can't handle it and They keep scaring off all the buyers. You may want to bring somebody like me in to do a good home cleansing and blessing and to talk to the spirits for you on your behalf and see if that will help. But good luck with that. Believe me, you're not alone. It happens a lot more. Okay, guys. Anything you want to know about my wife and I and our ministry work, go to our website, www.ghost-b-gone.biz, and that is our ministry. That's our website and our ministry here in Las Vegas. Keep in mind that my wife and I don't charge for our paranormal assistance, helping people with their paranormal issues. So I know times are tough, but if you go there to the website to visit and you notice the donate button and you're able to do so, click on it and send in a small donation. I promise you, it'll be appreciated from the bottom of our hearts. And trust me, we'll put it to good use. In addition to being an ordained exorcist, I'm also a certified spiritual advisor. So if you're having issues of a spiritual nature, not attached to the paranormal, and you'd like to speak to the Rev about that, there's a place on the website where you can make an appointment to speak with me. But don't leave the website without navigating back over to the page called the WSE course/book. On that page, you'll find the ghost store. In the ghost store, you'll find all kinds of cool things to buy: cups, hats, hoodies, other things, if you go for that sort of stuff. But scroll down to the bottom of that page and you'll see my new haunted autobiography, God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry. And I quote, scariest book I ever published. That was Annette Munich, owner of Stellium Books, my publisher. But don't let that scare you off of purchasing a copy. If you haven't done your good deed for the day yet, part of the proceeds of every sale of every copy of my book goes to support stjude.org, St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital, Nevada, and the ASPCA. So you get to help some seriously needy kids. What's more important than that? And the animals, too. What's more important than that? You can get the book a little less expensive at Amazon, but if you purchase the book at the website, I autograph it, and it arrives to you in a house blessing kit. So that's pretty cool. Scroll a little further down, and what's really cool, let me just throw this out there real quick, is now's a great time to buy the book and get all caught up because God, Ghosts, and the Paranormal Ministry 2, Chronicles of an American Exorcist, comes out this summer. And there are some stories in the first book I left open-ended that I bring closure to and talk about in the second book. So that's a good reason to get the first book now and get all caught up before the second book arrives. Scroll a little further down, you'll see the Worldwide Society of Exorcists, which I am a founding member. I offer a 12-week online college-level course, Introduction to Spiritual Warfare, through the WSE. And this is a course for all you true warriors for Christ that feel a calling and a longing to want to have more knowledge when it comes to drawing your line in the sand, making a stand, circling the wagons, and putting up a good fight against, God forbid, true evil if it ever comes calling. That's the course for you. You can enroll in the course there at the website, but if you'd like more information on the course before making that type of commitment, there is a Worldwide Society of Exorcists Facebook page. You can go there, or you can just reach out to me, give me a call, send me a message, and talk to me about the course. Do me a big favor. Keep all of my former, current, and future students in your prayers, and all my students that graduate the course get a stunning diploma, certificate of completion suited for framing, along with some other very special gifts, blessed gifts that you can only get from yours truly, the Rev. Okay, guys, now is the moment you've all been waiting for and why you tuned in today. There's not a whole lot I can say about this guy other than I love him, I respect him, I consider him a good friend. He's the Bigfoot guy that all the other Bigfoot guys go to talk about the big guy. So, researcher, experiencer, and just a cool dude. Please welcome to the show the one and only Karl SUP. Karl, are you with us today?
I am. I am. How you doing?
I am doing great. Um, I forgot to tell everybody, which now they're going to get a big dose of. You've got the greatest made for radio and podcasting voice of anybody I've ever known. So I'm going to bug you about two things today. Finish your book,
Okay.
and you need a podcast. You need a cryptid and all things paranormal podcast. And if you need any help with that, talk to me, okay?
I could always do a voiceover for you too. And now the Reverend Sean Whittington.
Be
Yeah.
careful what you wish for. Brother, what do I want to talk to you about today? I want to talk to you about anything you want to talk about. And it doesn't have to just be cryptids and Bigfoot, although that's why I brought you on here. A lot of people have sent me in some questions to ask you about Bigfoot. I thought I would open up the airways and tell people it can be a Q&A with Karl Supp. If you have a question for him or me, you can put it in the chat. My co-producer Zach Clayton will, if he thinks the question's worthy, and they all are, he'll throw it up there. And if Karl and I notice it, we'll address it and answer the question. But I do have some questions for you here. But I thought I would just, if there's any recent investigations or research outings you've gone on, or anything that you've never shared with me before about the big guy or anything else, the show is yours today. But we can also do we can talk about the new show that's out that I happen to like. We can talk about a couple of experiences that other friends of mine that have had. But whatever you want to talk about, man. So
Okay. I'll kick it off. So I'll catch up if people who have tuned in before to listen to me. The I, I get out. I typically pre-COVID. I mean, I was pretty much out in the woods almost every night. A lot of times in different states, just because work takes me around to a lot of different places. So back in from 2014 to 2016, I was actually out on Long Island, and I initially, there's no reports out there, right? So how am I going to find, a how am I going to find a Bigfoot out there? Worst case scenario, I get out and I get hiking, right? And that's it, and I just enjoy nature, right? It's a win-win. and um, but what I finally decided to do was actually look into the different paranormal groups that were out on Long Island and start reading some of their blogs. Like, oh, they went out. Oh, there's some haunted woods in this area. Oh, okay. What? Well, we saw some eyes that glowed red, or we had rocks thrown at us in the dark, or I saw something large with red eyes climbing a tree, or et cetera, et cetera, and or a mournful howl, and then there's always some kind of a paranormal story that they make up for it to say that it's the ghost of um, a mother that mourning for her child who drowned at this lake, and eh, but when you actually kind of peel it back just a layer, right? There's some truth in it, right? There's something that
yeah,
somebody experienced and a story. And when I started looking at especially stories that went all the way back into the 1600s of specific areas that and they named those areas, like Spook Hill or what, that kind of thing. It's like, okay, we need to look closer there. So the more research I did out there, sure enough, I ended up finding them out there and started almost a well, by the time I found them, it was probably 6 months had passed, but I started, exchanging gifts out there, and that was really a rewarding experience. Almost saw them a couple times, but they were running fast. I'll put it that way. And and then fast forward, I was in Chicago, the suburbs of Chicago for a couple years, and did research there, and ended up seeing three of them there. Once I had narrowed it down to an area where there was actually you know uh, beds that I found, bedding material that had been woven, and it was like, okay, they're in this area, and then you have to kind of backtrack and look. okay, why are they in this area? What's the motivation? Where can they go and hide during the day if they're, um, if they want to get away from people? Is there an area that they can kind of escape? Their little escape hatch, and um, and you'd kind of find that, respect it, don't go tromping in there, okay? But you can certainly see, based on the number of footprints coming and going from that area, once I actually got close to that area, it was like, oh, this is obvious. There's a lot of foot traffic going back and forth. But and then lately, I've been going to St. Louis a lot, and I spent a lot of time in Southern Illinois, and um, and kind of Eastern Missouri, just right on the along the Mississippi River, and that's been pretty rewarding. I've got a lot of responses back with as far as calls went, and find really didn't see much evidence, only because by the time I get there it's kind of dark, so it's easier to look for evidence during the day,
Yeah.
and you don't have to work all day. So, but yeah, no, I had a sighting at night. It was standing right on the side of the road, um, and that was pretty amazing. Mainly because as I approached with my brights on, going about 35 miles an hour, and all of a sudden I saw a glint, and at first I thought, oh, it's just like a reflective marker on a road sign, and then I realized there was no road signs there, and then as I got closer, it actually turned, so I got a glint, and as it turned and looked directly at me, the brights lit up its eyes, and then it squinted. And by the time I got the brakes on, I was maybe 200 feet past it, and I backed up, and the shaggy tree moss. Initially, when I saw it, I thought it was just like a tree with moss on it, uh, just because it was hanging, and that was actually kind of almost a whitish, like a gray brown hair to it, that made it kind of almost look like a lichen or a moss, and but it was gone by the time I literally got 200 feet past, backed up quickly. It was gone. But yeah,
Let me ask you about seeing them.
yeah,
And I've had people that have seen them, just their descriptions as far as how they feel are all over the place. For you personally, how has whatever you felt the first time you had an experience or a sighting or an encounter with one of them to how it is now? Uh,
oh,
if it hasn't changed, or if it's intensified, or how have you changed over
yeah,
time with that?
sure. So yeah, my first sighting, I actually had my nephew was with me, and he was looking. You know, we had kind of drawn one in, and we were looking through the night vision scope. Well, he ended up getting to his total time at night in the woods looking for Sasquatch was 53 minutes, and he saw one. So, um, you know, lucky kid. But everybody always tells me that I'm like a Squatch magnet when I go into
Yeah,
the
yeah.
woods. But the I went. Uh, at that time, it the female subject ran behind a tree that I saw, and then she stood behind that tree with her hand just on the side of that tree for about 3 minutes. So 3 minutes is like an eternity as far as the Sasquatch sighting goes. I don't think she realized the hand was visible and her forearm, so you could actually see all the hair hanging down in just the light breeze. The hair was moving. You could see the infrared glow off the fingernails. It was, you know, it was amazing. But then the moment she took her hand down off of there, I didn't know where she was. And then we started hearing other things, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, my sister-in-law would kill me if my nephew was snatched or I had no idea. I had no idea what to expect. Once they kind of went, when she went hidden again, and so there was a little bit of anxiety with that, but I wasn't really nervous. I didn't run away. I didn't, from that. But my second sighting, I actually saw one running, and it was daytime, and I'll never I'll never forget the speed and the smooth gait, and it was like a rocket coming out of there. I mean, it had to have been running 30 miles an hour across
Wow.
some pretty rough terrain, um, and the moment I saw that, I thought, you know what? At any given time, if they really wanted to, that they'd take me.
Yeah.
They could get me. It doesn't matter what I do. You couldn't draw fast enough. You couldn't. You know, there would be nothing to protect yourself. So the only way to protect, the only way to do it is to really communicate with them and understand them and kind of converse with them more at their level or our level. And over the, since that point, start thinking like them more. Um, that really, that really eased my mind. It's like now I don't. Now they'll come within, 30 feet of camp. I can hear them. I even offered the one time, and I think I told you the last time I was on, but it was right within, right by the campfire. There was a bunch of dense brush behind me, not even 5 feet behind, and I kind of, and I just as I was pouring a shot of whiskey, I heard the brush really start shaking, and I thought to myself, okay, well, it's interested. So I poured a shot, and I didn't turn around. I gave them full control. I didn't look. I didn't look. I just reached behind with the shot glass towards the brush, and the brush moved, and the brush moved, and the brush moved for about a minute. It was thinking. It may have been even coming closer, and then it decided it didn't want it, or that it was just too scared.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
know. So
I'm going to go a little morbid here for a second.
sure.
Um, I have a friend that I know who he's retired now, but he spent most of his adult life and probably 40 years as a forest ranger, and he had been stationed in out in some areas like in some of them big towers,
Yep.
areas where people just don't go, and you never see people. And it's basically you're watching for fires and things like that. It's I guess some of these areas are federally owned.
Correct.
They some of them may be, yeah, he's forest ranger, so some of them are national parks, some maybe not, but never saw any military and things like it. But he's told me stories about seeing them, but there was a rash of children missing from campsites for a while, especially in one of the parks that he worked at for many, many years. And they were told not to talk about. They always wrote it off as like a bear or a cougar came into camp and took this kid. But there were some witnesses that had seen something else take the kid, and they were all told to hush hush, don't even mention it, you're going to lose your job. We don't it's either a bear or it was a cougar, or the kid just went out walking and got lost and probably fell down a ravine and
Yep.
drowned or something.
Sure.
So now if they are abducting children, and like you said, they could abduct anybody, they could abduct an adult, they can abduct a child. Let's say in the abduction theory, let's say the men, if they abduct a child, and they're always the troublemaker, and you hear of some of the indigenous refer to them as forest demons. So let's say the men take them and eat the kid. Let's say the women take them and raise them.
Yep.
Um, and I have another theory. I'm going to ask you what your theory is on the abductions, and I'm going to ask you a theory on if a male Sasquatch abducted an adult female, human female, do you think the possibilities of interspecies mating is possible? And now the third part of this question, I'm laying it all on you here. Diseases. I remember all the years I worked with the Siegfried and Roy people, where we took care of the lions and tigers was right next to where the dolphins were. And if you worked with the lions and tigers, whether you were coming to work, leaving work, going on break, going to lunch, you were not allowed to go anywhere near where the dolphins were because the lions and tigers could transfer certain diseases to the dolphins that would just kill them. And it happened far more than they ever let on. And it was terrible and it was sad, but it is what it is.
Yep.
So they really cracked down on that. If you worked over there with the Siegfried and Roy people, you couldn't go anywhere near the dolphin habitat. I know these things are intelligent, and maybe even and I'm sure, and perhaps the government does know. Do you, I want you to talk about diseases and maybe the reason why it's so hard to find them. And I have another theory on that. But they either have diseases they can transfer to us that would just kill us, kill all humanity, just move through us like wildfire. And maybe the government knows about it, maybe they don't. Maybe Squatch knows about it. Or we transfer something to them that too much intermingling and being close to them, we transfer something to them that could kill them all out. And maybe it's already happened once. And they know about that. And maybe the government also knows about that. And that's why they're so hush hush about this. So I laid on the abduction thing, the
Okay. Yep.
difference between males and females, and I laid on you the the disease theory.
Okay. All right. So let's see. So abductions. So at least the ones that the ones that I've interacted with, I've never really felt that they were looking to snag people or whatever. But I think that and I've heard some other stories about this where like a child you know wandered off from camp, or maybe was taken from camp, but they end up finding it was barefoot. The boy was barefoot. They end up finding him 20 miles away 3 days later. His feet, and he said, "Oh, this
Yeah, I remember
this
that.
bear helped me out."
Yeah.
And and the kid was only like 3 or 4, but he said it was a big bear. Um, and I know of no bears that would help a 3-year-old child 20 miles through the wilderness. But the other one, um, but I don't know. I've never gotten a feeling that they were out specifically looking to abduct somebody. Although there are some stories throughout the history. There was a camper or gentleman that was in the 1920s. I think it was 24. He was kidnapped in British Columbia and taken almost like 50 miles to basically a Bigfoot clan up there, and he felt that the intent was that he was going to mate with them,
Hmm.
and that's why he was brought all that distance and the thing. Literally, he was scooped up in his sleeping bag at night, and he couldn't get out of it. He was just in the sack, and he was over the shoulder on the back of something, and just running all night, in the darkness. So he had no idea where he was even.
Think about how
Um,
much ground was covered.
right.
He knows that he was on the over the shoulder of something that ran all night.
Yep. Correct.
Wow. Think about that for a minute. And you talk about the speed and the ground that they cover. Yeah, just that's so incredible. I find that so incredible.
Yeah. And and as far as the DNA goes, the DNA samples that have been tested, they really show that it was, that they're a hybrid, or at least most of them are. I'm not going to talk about like Dogman or anything else like that, because I haven't personally experienced it, or if I have, I didn't realize that. But they're really a hybrid, and the DNA showed that um, there's far greater experts on the DNA than myself, but the maternal side was human, and the paternal side was unknown hominid. Okay, so Some would say that it was the unknown hominid side would be what they would call true giants. And at some point, we're close enough because I believe that sample that I just talked about tested out to be like 99.3% the same as us. So good enough in order to, in order to mate with. And I've had some people, asking me when I'm in the woods doing a call or something. They said,
Yeah.
"How do you know that you're not actually like calling them in and going, hey, come here?" And I'm like, nah, I'm not worried about that. So
I'm gonna do my best to talk about this and not turn this into a Sasquatch pornography show. Um, could we couldn't even imagine, but I don't know if a man could hold up to doing that with a female squatch. You would think, I don't know, but you
yeah,
would think that it would probably kill the man because it's just so big, so strong. Who knows exactly how this happened, how they do what they do
right.
to make little Sasquatches. That would be, and if you're, let's say you're the guy that gets, drug over the shoulder and carried all night long somewhere, and you are in this camp and you think that's going to happen. What's the choice do you make? Do you run and leap off a cliff? Do you pick up a big rock and smack it upside the head of one of the males to have him just kill you like that? Because that's not as bad as what you're going to have to experience if you have to mate with a female squatch. Or do you just, are you adventurous enough to just go for it? And if you go for it, do they kill you afterwards? I mean,
Yeah,
oh my
I don't
God,
know. I don't know.
that would make a great movie. But you just, I, I don't think. I think that they are very protective. I
Yep,
think there's different. You may find some that are very. Their particular clan may be aggressive.
yep.
Some clans not so aggressive. But you obviously they don't cook. So if they're
No,
killing deers and elks and moose and things like that, and maybe other bears to eat, they're eating raw meat.
yep.
Um,
And they love bone marrow.
I don't think they're
Like,
I don't think they're cannibalistic.
no, I don't think so. I mean, I don't have any evidence to that, but I mean, I know they love bone marrow because I've found elk and deer that have been picked clean and all the bones, I mean, really down to small pieces, have been snapped, broken, and all the marrow has been sucked out of it. So, as far as I know, I don't know of any coyotes or wolves out there that will suck marrow out,
Yeah.
out
Well,
of bones.
let's talk about diseases now. What do you think? Oh, there
Oh,
you
here
go.
we go.
Thank you, Zach. We'll put diseases on the back burner and we'll talk about gifting.
Yep.
That is a picture. I sent Zach actually three of them, and one's fine, Zach. You don't have to put the other three up if you don't want to. Um, that is a ancient wooden flute like
Yep.
uh, instrument,
Yep.
if you will, that was gifted to you
It was.
by a Sasquatch,
Hmm.
um, which I know it's very fragile. And I joked with you in the green room before the show started that if that was gifted to me, I'd be wearing it as a necklace. Um, so it's definitely too fragile to do that. But now I want to ask you. I remember you talking about just prior to getting gifted that you would hear whistling, song like whistling
Yep.
from these creatures before you were gifted that. Maybe this whistling was coming from the instrument and it was
Mm,
showing you this is how I made this noise. Can you make this noise
yeah.
back using
Yeah.
this? Or
It
maybe it
was
was the
definitely. It
lips.
sounded. It sounded more like lips. It sounded just like just. regular whistling, but a little louder volume, certainly a lot more air volume passing over the lips. Even though I was probably 300 feet away from them, they were hidden and you couldn't, I couldn't see them, but you could certainly hear the wind passing over lips.
Yeah.
The the um, the flute itself is it looks like it was made quite a while previously, and one piece it kind of actually was broken off of it, but it was you could, I mean, real close ups of the all the finger holes and everything. It's very crude, like a stone was used to carve out each of those holes, and it's really an interesting piece. And at the time, absolutely couldn't believe what I was looking at when I found it. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" like,
Yeah,
um,
unbelievable. And you talk about using a stone to carve. I mean, there have been stone carvings found
oh yeah,
by squatchers out there, researchers that clearly have been made by something. So that's intelligence,
oh
and
yeah,
that's something with thumbs and something with it can think
oh,
to be able to manage that.
absolutely. I was in an area that was probably 15 miles from nobody, and hiking through the woods. I'm looking for nesting sites and so forth, and I see this rock outcropping. So I go to check out the rock outcropping. I get up to it, and I find this piece of sandstone that had been smashed onto the rock. It was like a larger, it's probably about an 8-inch diameter stone smashed on the rock, and something in this remote area had taken the rock and then scratched and was drawing with it on the other sandstone. So it was like, it's a script, and I look down and it's like, well, that's, you know, I know of nothing that would smash a rock and then take pieces of it and start drawing with it. That's
So, what do you think about the disease theory? Am I
so.
reaching here?
I think so. They're pretty hardy. I do know that it's possible like smallpox affected them. I'm not sure, but it seems to me that at least you know long before that their numbers were far less than they are today. I think their numbers have been increasing steadily. Obviously, I have no proof on that other than the fact that I can go into certain areas, like I can go into Chicago and find them in the forest preserves. I can go out on Long Island and find them. I can go into outside of St. Louis and find them. So um, it's and of course they're in Arizona, which is where I'm based out of. But it's it. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure that they're really affected as much. I know it's going to sound weird, and I don't think I ever talked about it, but I mean, I was actually touched through a tent by one back in 2013, and um, that was slightly scary because when you wake up and your head's lifted off the air mattress, and then as you start stirring, waking up, all of a sudden you hear, the dermal ridges of the hand sliding against the nylon of the tent as it kind of set you back down, and then you hear bipedal steps going off into the woods at 3 a.m. in the morning. That was
Letting you know, um, you know how gentle they can be, and
right.
that they mention that's the ultimate. They meant you no harm, but absolutely you could have just been squashed like a bug.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it
Absolutely,
it
yeah,
it had my head completely in its palm. So, and I'm not a small guy. I'm 6'5". So,
yeah. Incredible. Let's talk about the show,
okay,
Expedition Bigfoot.
yeah,
I remember finding Bigfoot, which me and a lot of my friends, after a couple of years, we just jokingly would call it never finding Bigfoot because we knew they never were. But we enjoyed it. What I really enjoyed about that show, one, I still have a theory that Bobo is got some Squatch in him. He's a hybrid. Then they're keeping it a secret. But I loved the town hall meetings because you'd go into these towns that just look like every other town. Everybody's normal, going about their business, walking up and down the street, shopping, going to school, working, whatever. They have these town hall meetings. Show up if you've ever seen a Bigfoot and had an encounter. And these town hall meetings would just be packed with
Yep.
these
Oh,
all
they
these
were.
townspeople wanting to tell their story. That's what I loved about that show. I knew that I was never going to see him. Now, Expedition Bigfoot, I'll tell you what I like about it. Four extremely different people that I've never seen anybody other squatchers researchers like these four, which I find intriguing. But you talk about being scared. You know, they're so gung ho and they're out there. They're searching for them, and I know they're all. I know these people are legit people. They're not a joke.
Right.
But when they get to a part where even I have once or twice gone, am I really about to see this show a Sasquatch? You can see on their faces they're stopped dead in their tracks and they're shaken to their boots. They're frightened. They're like, "Oh my god, am I actually about to encounter one?" And you can't there's no shame in being afraid. Come on. I
No.
would. You know, you go searching for them, know ahead of time. If you eventually find one, you're going to shit your pants because that's just what people do when that happens.
I
So
am beyond that point. I'll put it that way.
I'm not, and I do that if I get scared enough, and I have in my life. But um, that's what I love about that show. But I'll tell you what else I love about the show, and it's in my field too: spiritual warfare and ghost hunting and exorcism. The longer I'm in this field, the less I think I know. And this show now, I've learned things I never thought there was more to learn with the field of cryptids and Sasquatch research. So that's what I find fascinating about it. And let's pick it apart. This cloaking. And you talked about seeing this thing that looked like a sign at first or moss hanging on a tree when you drove by it quickly. Then it's just gone.
Right.
I do still believe God created these things. I do believe they're of flesh and blood, but I do believe there's a great deal of supernatural ability attached to them. And many of my indigenous friends will tell you absolutely. So let's talk about the cloaking.
Yes.
These
I have a great story for this too, by the way.
and when they first brought it up and the infrasound, when they
Yeah.
first brought up infrasound and cloaking, I thought of a story a friend of mine who lives up in the great northwest, um, who is totally not. I mean, the last person on earth to ever believe or even think about him or care about him. But she goes out on these hikes in areas where nobody goes with her dogs. And after she had lived in this area for a while, she gets a call from a friend, and they're just talking. And her friend happens to say to her, "Have you ever seen a big? Well, where you're at now? Have you ever happened to see a Bigfoot?" And it hit her like a bolt of lightning. This flashback of when she was on a hike and she saw one, and although she didn't see its lips move, he psychically and telepathically told her, "You don't see me. You're tired and you need to get home." And her dogs, who would normally chase and bark at anything, were just frozen, and they just so nonchalantly all walked back home. And she totally forgot about the incident until sometime later her friend jokingly brought the topic up in a conversation. So the infrasound and the cloaking, and now I throw it to you, sir.
Yeah. So just last September, I was up in Arizona, up in the area that I always go to for researching, and uh, mainly because I know that they kind of already know me in that area. So when they see me, a lot of times they'll come in close to camp, or you know, or they'll follow us. And here we were here we were driving up this pretty remote road up into this canyon, kind of four wheeling it up in there. And as we're driving along this road, I know this is going to sound horrible, but my friend and I had the windows down because I'm listening actually as I'm driving as well. Um, I all of a sudden, overwhelmingly, the smell of feces. Okay, and I'm talking like it didn't smell like deer. It didn't. It
And it's
smelled like
even beyond feces. It's just like, yeah.
it smelled. It smelled like human feces, like right in your face. I mean, it was that strong. So, did I speed up? No, of course. I stopped the car
And
immediately,
skunk,
and
and a lot of people say it could have been a skunk. No, skunk is different. Skunk is
it is.
different.
Oh, it's completely different. So I get out of the car, and I'm in this area where it's probably 150 feet to the tree line uphill. So I start hiking up that direction towards the tree line, and the smell moves. Okay, all of a sudden the smell's now off to my right, and then and I finally I'm like, I can't give chase. I'll go back to the car. So I go back to the car, and when I get back to the car, it was dissipated. And the moment I started up the car again, all of a sudden the smell was overwhelming right near the car again. Well, we had a clear view for 50, 60 feet at least around where the car was. So I don't know how that smell could transit into the vehicle. I mean, it was pretty strange. So I drove further down the road, about another maybe a quarter mile, third of a mile, and I get down into this big meadow, and I parked and I got out and I just sat down in the middle of this meadow. So I've got clear view for probably one direction's probably almost 300 feet. Okay, before it gets to the tree line, and to go to the other side and it's maybe 100 feet. So I'm in the middle of an completely open area. And as I'm sitting there, I can smell this human feces smell. It was circling us. It's on one side, it's on the other side. Very light breeze, but wasn't swirling breeze or anything like that. It was unusual. My friend was even he's like it's within 20 feet of us from the strength of the smell, but we couldn't see anything. It was just not there. That was really that was really an interesting experience. As far as like a true cloaking type of thing, that's the only thing I could think of because, like I said, we had, and I kind of set up in the meadow particularly to test this, and the fact that it happened like that, it was very unusual. But
Well, let me ask you this about the smell.
yeah,
And old time squatchers will tell you, like, if I don't get that smell, I know, regardless of what I'm experiencing, I know it's not Bigfoot. I really go off of the smell. My wife used to raise wild wolves back in the day, and
yeah,
she would talk about the only drag was you could never let them inside because they always smelled like you know what, because
yeah,
they would do it and then they'd roll around in it. Do
yeah.
you think there's any of that going on with them? Because that's bears don't smell like that. Elk
No,
don't smell. Bears and elk, they smell nasty and they smell like bears and elks.
yep,
But Squatch, that's, I mean, yeah, that's a.
that's a whole new
I've
smell.
smelled the demonic and I've smelled Squatch, and it's different, but it's both bad. And you
Oh, it
wonder if
is.
there's, you think there's any of that going on,
I,
uh,
I
taking it and putting it on them or rolling around in it because every clan has their own scent.
Yeah, it's possible. There's some people that theorize that that's the males that actually, almost have like a scent gland or whatever. But it's more than that because now it's this one that I smelled last September or October, or, yeah, end of September last year in Arizona. It was, like I said, it smelled just like human feces, and the but the only all the other close encounters that I've had, no smell, and
Really?
I except for one in when I was on Long Island, and I just missed seeing it by seconds, hiking around this corner, and all of a sudden I hear it, so I started, hoofing it in that direction, and I got there just in time to hear it running down through this thick brush, and but the smell trail that it left was it was horrendous. But I actually walked through the trail. Was probably the smell was like a 10-foot wide swath of stench that it left in its path. And I walked through it a couple times, and I tell you what, I almost threw up. I was gagging
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it
And
was
and I here I am again thinking again about this mating, a man mating to a female squatch. Yeah,
yeah,
I can't. I know me. I'm a
yeah,
I'm an I'm an I'm a scent person. I
yeah,
I, I couldn't do it.
yeah. But I mean, the
Yeah.
one that I smelled was like a combination of uh, I want to say like road summer roadkill plus fresh grass clippings that have been sitting in the sun for a couple days, and then um, uh, what was my and then summer J John. like if you went to go use a J John or a porta potty in the parking lot, after
Yeah. Worse. It's worse than
it,
that.
but it was a
Yeah.
combination of those. I just never smelled anything as horrible as that. So
Well, what we'll do, I already know I'm going to reach out to you and have you back for. I think this is your third visit. I'll have you back for. I
I'd
one
love it.
one visit isn't enough. Several visits isn't enough because there's a lot more. I didn't even look down on my notes today, and I'm going to be so upset when I look at them later and go, "Wow, you should have asked him that." So everybody that sent me in a question for you, I apologize, but I'll have you back, and we'll do a series of different topics about them, and we'll just hone in on that topic for that
Sure,
particular show. But I want to finish today before I have to cut you loose with the paranormal aspect. And for a while, a lot of longtime squatchers wouldn't talk about this because they thought, oh, on top of people already thinking I'm crazy because I believe in Bigfoot, now they're going to think I've lost it when I talk about some of the paranormal activity I've experienced. But now this show has touched base on that. And so we talk about these glowing orbs in the forest that always seem to either come before or right after a Squatch sighting, the UAPs that show up before and after a Squatch sighting. Squatchers have told me about I see ghosts in the forest. I hear all these crazy things that happen um, associated with now these encounters. Let's talk about what do you think about this the paranormal aspect now being attached to this, and and what's your feelings on that?
I have seen some of these orbs at times, but it wasn't directly related. Like following or preceding a Sasquatch sighting. But I've seen unusual lights sometimes in the woods, and I don't know if it's what going back centuries, right? They even called them will o' the wisps, right? It, and I couldn't tell you what they are, or if it is something related to Sasquatches, or maybe who knows? I know there's people that theorize that those lights are them moving through portals or whatever. It hasn't been in my experience. I'm a little more you know pragmatic, in that regard, but it's I don't know. It's an interesting thing. There's a lot of
Yeah,
people that have seen things, so I certainly can't discount it. But like I've always said, I'm my worst critic. I I am a skeptic when I'm in the woods. If a twig snaps, it's not a Sasquatch, right? That's my first reaction, and then as I start checking down the list of, okay, it's not this, it's not this, it's not this. Okay, the only other thing that's unexplained, or it's something just like finding that writing on the rock, the scribbling on the rock by using another rock to break it, and I mean, that kind of thing is it just it's unexplainable, but there has to be an explanation. So
yeah.
um, and that's what keeps driving me forward. You know,
Well, I know off the bat, and I'll make notes of this before I have you back. Some of the stuff that you and me will really dive into when I have you back will be government cover up. Because I'm thinking of a story people talked about after Mount St. Helens, witnessing uh, military helicopters going in and coming out with these huge hairy bodies hanging from below the helicopters in these nets being carried out, and they weren't deer or elk or anything like that, or bear. Um, and the government really kept that hush hush. And apparently, these things were too close to the eruption and obviously died. And the
Yep.
government knew they were out there and went out and wanted to get them out of there before anybody else found them. So we'll dive into that a little bit, cover up. And the beddings and the structures. I have some theories on that. It's one thing to find the markings, but when you see a tree that's been up, a tree that's bigger around than me, picked up and then uprooted and slammed right down in the middle of the path,
Yep.
that's different. And I and,
Absolutely.
and I have theories about the females being the ones doing the woven with the huge branches the size of my arm, the woven beddings, and I believe it's more male, the structures where you see the trees that are huge trees that are all made into a teepee. Um, I have theories on that, but we'll cover all that when I have you back. So you had fun? Will you come back?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And just to know, let you know too, I am, and maybe if we have a few minutes, I'll even talk about the Piasaw bird next time, which is
Absolutely,
talk about
absolutely.
extra cryptids.
I'll tell you right now. I already know I'm booked to the I'm booked to the end of September. I'm
Okay,
already booking now for October, and I have some dates, both Fridays and Mondays, whatever works for you. I'll throw you some dates. I'll have you back for a um, and I'll have just a few topics picked out that we will just totally. I'll give you a heads up ahead of time what topics I'm going to throw at you. You can bring out all your research books, and we'll just really dive into that.
okay,
But
perfect.
God bless you, brother.
And anybody else listening too, if you guys want, a lot of my writings are out on ghosthuntingtheories.com. So if you just go up there to the search button, type in Karl SUP, you'll find a bunch of my research and pretty much a research log, and it's pretty detailed. So
I'm so glad you threw that out because that's Sharon Day's
it
blog,
is.
and she introduced us, and so that's cool. And you'd have some great stuff on there. So I love you, brother. Have a great remainder of your Friday evening and your weekend, and have a great 4th of July. God bless you. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All
Good
right.
night, brother. Karl Sup. I always go to the website and type in "What's up?" Karl, I love you, brother. All right, guys. I love Sasquatch. I used to never be a Sasquatch guy. And Jill, I saw your question, and I will after the show's over, I'll go back and read and answer your question. But thank you all so much for tuning in. Who's my guest? Okay, guys, I'm calling out the big guns and asking you all to make sure you're here Monday. My Monday show is a different time. It's 5 p.m. But Monday, the 27th, this coming Monday, it's a tradition that goes back 3 years when I had my radio show. The last Monday of every month was a special night that I called Happy Medium Mondays. And my co host was the one and only, live from Cape Cod, the happy medium herself, Susan Ahern, will be here. She agreed to rekindle and bring life back to Happy Medium Mondays on the paranormal ministry here. So the last Monday of every month will be Happy Medium Mondays, where Susan will be here for an hour doing live on air psychic readings. They're quickie readings, and it'll all be from the chat room, no call ins. So you tune in, you type in a question to Susan in the chat. Zach will put it up on the screen. Susan will read it. She'll answer your question. You're going to love her if you don't already know her and love her. So that's this Monday, the 27th, the first Happy Medium Monday on Reverend Sean Whittington's Paranormal Ministry Live this coming Monday. Tune in. I want to give her a nice, big, warm Paranormal Ministry family welcome. Now, I want to thank a lot of people here real quick, and then I want to do something a little different. I want to thank Things Network. I want to thank Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. I want to thank Skeleton Key Network. I want to thank Pact Podcasting for All Coming Together channel for simulcasting my show. And this is what I'm going to do from now on to finish the show. I'm going to tell a bad joke. It's my poor attempt at putting a smile on everybody's face because of all I'm overwhelmed right now with how many people reach out to me throughout the weeks leading up to shows on how depressed everybody is about just the world right now in life. You name it, they're depressed about it, and some people feel that they've lost all hope. So it's my poor attempt at putting a smile on everybody's face, but I'm asking all of you to contribute. Start sending me in your favorite bad joke. I'll write it down. I'll attach your name into it. I'll pull them from a hat, literally pulling them from this hat, worn by a carnival barker who asked me to come and investigate his carnival once. And when he passed away, his daughter sent me his hat because she said he knew that you would love to have that hat. And I'll tell you, the weird energy on this hat is off the charts. And I'll tell you, in my second book, I talk about that story where I went to this haunted carnival and investigated. So look forward to that in the second book. But I'll pull the jokes out of that hat and I'll read them live on air at the end of the show. So I will kick it off today. And he was also a magician. So having said that, what do you call an owl that's a magician? A Houdini. Good night, Danny. Good night, Jack. Good night, dog. Good night, Harold. Rest in peace. Good night, Ernie. Good night, Bill. Good night, Dan. I love you all. God bless you all. Peace.